read in Second Chronicles chapter 3 in the King James Version. And the previous chapter was Second Chronicles chapter 2. I can't remember if I said First Chronicles. Anyways, let's continue to read in Second Chronicles chapter 3 in the King James Version. Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem in Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David his father, in the place that David had prepared, in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And he began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month, in the 4th year of his reign. Now these are the things wherein Solomon was instructed for the building of the house of God. The length by cubits, after the first measure, was 60 cubits, and the breadth 20 cubits. And the porch that was in the front of the house, the length of it was according to the breadth of the house, 20 cubits, and the height was 120. And he overlaid it within with pure gold. In the greater house he sealed with fir tree, which he overlaid with fine gold, and set thereon palm trees and chains. And he garnished the house with precious stones for beauty, and the gold was gold of Parvaim. And he garnished the house, he overlaid also the house, the beams, the posts, and the walls thereof, and the doors thereof with gold, engraved cherubims on the walls. And he made the most holy house, the length whereof was according to the breadth of the house, 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits. And he overlaid it with fine gold, amounting to 600 talents. And the weight of the nails was 50 shekels of gold, and he overlaid the upper chambers with gold. And in the most holy house he made 2 cherubims of image work, and overlaid them with gold. And the wings of the cherubims were 20 cubits long. One wing of the one cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was likewise 5 cubits, reaching to the wing of the other cherub. And one wing of the other cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was 5 cubits also, joining to the wing of the other cherub. The wings of these cherubims spread themselves forth 20 cubits, and they stood on their feet, and their faces were inward. And he made the veil of blue, and purple, and crimson, and fine linen, and wrought cherubims thereon. Also he made before the house 2 pillars of 30 and 5 cubits high, and the chapiter that was on the top of each of them was 5 cubits. And he made chains, as in the oracle, and put them on the heads of the pillars, and made 100 pomegranates, and put them on the chains. And he reared up the pillars before the temple, one on the right hand and the other on the left, and called the name of that on the right hand Jachin, and the name of that on the left Boaz. And so, again, a lot here, sermon upon sermon, particularly in that last verse there in verse 17. But let's go back to where it talks about in the first verse. Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem and Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David his father, in the place that David had prepared, in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Remember what happened and why that happened? Remember how David obtained this threshing floor? And why now we're getting the answer as to what was the importance of it? David did something. Think about it. If you've been following along, David did something. Yeah, he's done a couple of things, but this was one of the things that he did later on that he shouldn't have. I'll give you a hint. It starts off with the devil was involved with that. And so he did something he wasn't supposed to. So someone, a prophet, came by and said, okay, choose 3 things. Well, it ends up, he's threw himself to mercy and ends up being a plague. And to stop that, he had to go and do an offering in a particular place. And that place was the threshing floor of Ornan's, where Ornan was it was like a grain or some of that. Go back to that Bible study if you would like to learn more about that in either 2 Samuel or 1 Kings. Correct me which one it is in. And so, but to going through, and then he buys that because he sees the angel of the Lord, and that stops when he does that, and he builds the quick altar there with the rock. Remember, rock, unchiseled rock. Then he burns the sacrifice on there. That stops what was going on, and so he buys it though from Ornan. Now we know why he bought that particular spot. That's where the tabernacle is going to be. So it's giving us a reminder unto David his father in the place that David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. I know, there's a lot there. And then verse 2, and he began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month in the 4th year of his reign. Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord. Bringing past to present. There's a lot here. One way to look at this is building blocks. Building blocks, building blocks. So in life, for instance, I have informed my parents because, yes, my parents provided me multiple opportunities to become a person that knows the Lord. Whether it was by church, whether it was by Bible lessons or verses from the Bible, whether it was observing and watching, whether it was singing hymns, whether it was just a reflection of life and who to depend on. And those building blocks were there for myself to be able to build on and come to know Christ as my Savior too. It's like planting a seed. It's like how we can plant a seed with each other. No, we don't know who all is saved and who is not saved, but we also can put those building blocks in place. We can also plant those little seeds. Even though you may not think you are always being utilized in the Lord, do understand when you have a relationship with the Lord and you are walking in the Spirit with Him, like you are focused on Him, you're being utilized. You are being utilized, and you may not know that you're planting seeds. You may not even know or understand that you're putting those building blocks in place for your loved one, for your significant other, for your spouse, for your parents, your grandparents, for children, for family, friends, and relatives, for your community. You may not even see it. The Lord can definitely reveal it to you. But understand, those are building blocks. By being a reflection of the Lord's love, it also shows someone else that may not be interested or may not even know or may have doubts that yes, there is an example and they can see one through you today. Before we go on though, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think?